Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Bateman, the Managing Director, Community and Partnerships at SheCanCode, and today we are discussing navigating the changing tech job market. I've got the incredible Heather Black, CEO and founder of Supermums, with me today, and she's here to share her insights on how the industry is shifting and what it means for professionals at every stage, especially mums looking to enter, re-enter, or progress in the tech industry. Welcome, Heather. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I know you're a really, really busy lady, and we absolutely love the work that you do at Supermum. So thank you so much for sharing some time with us and coming on to have a chat. We'd love to get started with a bit of background about you, if that's okay, to set the scene for our listeners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my background, where do we start with that? But I spent the first part of my career, just to summarize it, working running non-profit organizations. And I fell across, I was using Salesforce CRM for the non-profit I was running. And the non-profit helped young people start their own businesses and launch their careers. And fell in love with Salesforce as a product and how it helped as an organization to manage everything. We can see that visibility of data, see the outcomes we're having, coordinate communications as a team, and found my love for tech. I suppose I hadn't really had an appetite for tech in any way before. I had never worked in a business that had used a CRM. And so it was all completely new to me. But I think seeing the power of a client relationship management system and how it can support a business manage all their customer data, their intel, their analytics, and customer information, I was like, okay, this is really powerful. And so after running that non-profit, I was having a family. I was just, planning, had a wedding, thinking about the baby. We moved out of the city, all of those things that you think about when you're starting a family. And I thought I would pivot into a Salesforce career. Now, obviously I didn't just make that jump. I was kind of like, well, what will it involve? What will it do? So, we'll talk about this as part of the podcast today, but, how did I get the confidence to do it is one of the things that we had to think about. So anyway, I got the confidence through various things that I did and upskilled myself and launched myself as a Salesforce freelance consultant. So that's been where I started my journey in tech. Then grew a Salesforce consultancy because I was getting more work than I could manage myself. So grew to a team of 20. We worked with 350 nonprofits and helping them implement Salesforce during the time of running the consultancy. And as part of that, got this complete sort of mission to go, well, if I can have a flexible, well-paid career doing this, other mums can do as well, which is why I launched Supermums 8 years ago. So I kind of wanted to beat the drum and kind of make everybody aware of these great, flexible, well-paid career opportunities in the tech sector to go out and educate women. Hence why, it's lovely to do this podcast with you today, because I think we need more inspirational role models. We need to tell people what the opportunities are, and sort of attract more people into the tech sector. So this is what I do every day now is raising awareness, banging the drum, and seeing the amazing career change journeys of our supermoms that go through the program.
I love that. I love it when I talk to people that didn't know that they could have a career in tech. And like you said, and it was thinking about where do I find the confidence and where do I go? And that's something that we hear a lot in our community, finding other people that have done it as well to share that story and say, you know what, I've done it and you can do it too, and inspiring other people to do that. Because not a lot of people wake up one morning and go, yeah, I'm going to have a career in tech. I know what I want to do. I'm going to go to university when I'm, of university age, and I'm going to get a computer science degree and I'm going to go into technology. There are so many people that transition later in their career. And then, like, you worry about that. Where do I find the confidence? How do I almost catch up on where I am now? And actually, those technical skills, for instance, are not always needed in tech as well. And that is that kind of misconception about going into tech. I have to have certain coding skills, really, is the thing. But you didn't. You obviously honed in the things that you needed at the time, and they weren't things like coding.
No, we don't do any coding in some of the Salesforce roles. I mean, I talk about 6 different roles in Salesforce, and only one of them involves coding, right? All the others. And we do a quiz to help mums understand, what might suit them. So shall I dive into those different sort of skills
Yeah.
and roles now? Okay.
Yes.
So I created this quiz, which asks women about their superpowers at home, because I think they, in order to have that confidence, you want to find your superpowers. And so the quiz takes you through a set of questions about who are you in your home and your life and how you operate with your kids, with your family, with your friends. And it asks, if I sort of just summarize, I suppose, the key attributes, it's these are your attributes, right? And each of them leads to a different kind of job role in the tech industry. So if you are the mum at home that is the one that is the empathetic listener, always solving problems for people, always a listening ear, quite often the facilitator of people, you make a great business analyst, because as a business analyst, you are sitting down with a team, like a sales team, asking them what they do in their job day to day, being a counselor in some ways, because there'll be things that might frustrate them, but also you're introducing technology solutions that are going to solve all their problems and make their lives easier and better. So as a BA, you have to be a great listener, you have to facilitate conversations, you have to solve problems for people, so if that is your superpowers, that's where you want to be as a business analyst. If you are the mum at home that is the delegator, the organizer, you love budgets, you love making sure that everybody knows what they're doing, you're the military mum that gets the kids out, they've got perfect routine. I mean, I really admire this. This is not me. But you have a routine, everybody knows what they're doing. And maybe you do this in volunteer events, you volunteer activities. If you've got those project management skills, you'd make a great project manager, right? And that's maybe where you should position yourself in the tech sector, because you're just so organized and on things. And you love delegating, most importantly. That's a skill that anybody needs, I think. If you are the mum that is very much the first adopter, like you love DIY, you'll look things up on YouTube, you like fixing things, you like teaching people things, so you're quite keen to learn new stuff. So maybe the new gadgets we get, some of us take, months or years to kind of get a head around, oh my God, there's another new thing I need to learn. But if you're the one that loves doing that, say the DIY, you love tidying things and making things organized, actually that's where you could do some tech skills. Now, obviously tech is broad, but within the Salesforce sector, we talk about clicks and code. So actually you can be very technical and, be clicking things here and there to move things around and do things. You don't need any coding skills in quite a lot of technical roles in Salesforce. But obviously you can advance to a developer, which is where you're learning code and then you're building things more productively. So if those attributes, if they're your sort of superpowers, then definitely you might really love actually getting into the tech. And I think it really suits people that, like to get their head down and they're not necessarily talking to people all the time. So if you've got some introvert qualities, and you don't want to talk to people all the time, that a technical role might really suit you. And then the final attribute set is the mum that is the positive influencer, negotiator. If you've got a favorite thing that you buy, you're suddenly telling all your friends about it. If your kids are arguing and you've got to, you're great at negotiating with your kids or your partner about what you get. If that's the sort of person that you are, then you probably make a great account manager, i.e., where you're selling the technology to people. So you get that you listen to their problems, you're solving their problems with the solution, very authentic selling at the end of the day. But you don't have to do any of the delivery. You might be a great account manager. On an equal to that, you can also have what we call customer success managers who look after clients and will probably upsell products to them. So as a customer success manager, you're making sure they're making the most of the product and having those nice conversations. You're not doing anything technical, but you'll be upselling products to them because you want them to get the most of it, and you're listening and hearing for opportunities. So if you're, there's those different roles that you can go into, but it's all going back to your superpowers. So you don't need to have been a BA previously. You don't need to have been a project manager previously. But if you've got these skills, you can upskill. You can learn those things. At Supermums, we teach you to be a business analyst. We teach you to be a project manager. We teach you to be a Salesforce admin. All of those things you can learn and add, but they can build on what you're naturally good at. And my background was business coaching. So, I didn't even know what a business analyst was, but actually, as a business coach, I'm asking entrepreneurs about their business performance, their business process, their business strategy. And I was like, that is exactly the same as what a business analyst does. And so you've changed the terminology on your CV. You might not have had the job title business analyst, but I can say, actually, I've done a lot of business analysis with entrepreneurs around their business. Or, I've done a lot of project management. You might not have a job title as project manager, but you'd use, I've done a lot of project management doing X, Y, and Z. So it's about repurposing what you've done in the past and thinking about your superpowers.
I love that. I love everything you just said, because there's so many members in our community, they don't know how to transfer their skills sometimes from either previous careers, or I have had ladies who say, when I became a parent, I came back into the workforce a different person because I had all these new skills that I didn't have before I was a parent. And I did have one lady say to me, it was about negotiation, and she said, you know what, I didn't realize what was up for negotiation until I had a toddler. And she's like, there are so many new things that you have to negotiate on, and I didn't even know you'd have to. She said by the time I came back into the workforce, I was like chief negotiator because I had a
Great.
toddler.
Perfect example, yeah.
But that's the, and another lady said to me about time management and children and trying to get them out the door. So all of those things, I don't think sometimes people realize the things that they learn as a parent, and how to come back into the workforce and actually use them to your
Yeah,
advantage, and to find, like, your quiz is absolutely perfect to find out where you fit in and all of the new skills that you've learned. I love that. We must share that quiz with our community.
absolutely.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the tech job market, because that has changed massively. It has evolved over the past few years. What major trends are shaping it right now, do you think?
Mm. Well, I mean, AI, everybody's talking about AI, right?
Yeah.
So we'll look big, and then I'll go a little bit more into my industry, but or product sector. I think AI is, the talk of the town. That's where you're seeing the biggest shift for businesses. They're all kind of sitting on the fence and then panicking and moving forward because their competitors are doing it. If they don't do it, they'll miss out. So there is a lot of investment being put into AI. There's a lot of work needed to get that right in so many different ways, from making sure the guardrails are up to making sure that the data's right to even get the AI working properly. And everything else. So, we saw a shift during COVID to the digital HQ. We're now seeing this big shift where AI is the buzzword, and there's so many different AI products out there. It's kind of, I think, particularly for women, it can be like rabbit in headlights of where do I start and stop, right? There's so many
Yeah.
different type of AI products. And ironically, I signed up for this, course where I'll learn all these different AI products. And because it's on demand, I never blooming watch it. I pay this money and don't do it.
Yeah.
And it is interesting with our courses at Supermums, we make, it's a live training course. And so I think it's important that if we're going to lean into this, we need to go make sure we're on training courses that suit our learning style.
Yes.
So we find that people do our courses, and I, lens with my personal preferences. I like to show up for a classroom, virtual classroom with an instructor, learn it there and then. It creates that accountability and that structure. So I think everybody needs to learn and sort of get involved in technology and AI. It's where the job market's going. These younger kids coming through in 20s are going to get the jobs over us if we do not keep up to date. That is absolutely the reality right now. If we don't keep up to date with the knowledge and niche on certain areas, you've got to have a product niche. It's a bit like marketing. There's so many different products in marketing, tech products. It's the same with broader operational tech products. You have to find your niche, and you have to lean in hard on that niche and be a specialist. That's where you're going to make the money. So you don't get distracted by buying courses like I did about all these different products. I mean, yes, we need to know about different things because products will integrate right with each other. But find your product and your niche. Now, zoning in on my product market, so Salesforce CRM is the largest client relationship management system in the world. It's number one, repeated each year, for the last sort of 12 years. And so that's obviously, what I came into the market to do. It's used by the 90% of the FTSE 100. It's used by thousands of non-profits, thousands of businesses, and it's used all over the world. So you literally, you train up on a product, you get certifications that you can use all over the world. And Salesforce continues to grow year on year. So again, this year it's had a 12% increase, I believe, in like all its income and its product portfolio. They're leaning hard on Agentforce and have introduced new products around Agentforce's all the AI capability. So they're investing a lot in that. So with Supermums, we train people up in the product, we're training them up in the new AI capabilities. And if you lean in hard on that and you upskill, that's where people can really carve out a career opportunity. I think the job market, more people have come into the job market for sure. And so it is more competitive. I mean, we're obviously doing a good job, right? Because that's why we're here. We want more people to come into tech. We clearly still need more women into tech, so we have a role. But it is more competitive, and that's why we always say to our supermoms, have a product niche. Even within Salesforce, you have a product niche within Salesforce because there's a whole raft of products. And it goes, another sort of tip here really is about leaning into your superpowers. So Salesforce, for example, is implemented in lots of different industries. And so if you've got a background in finance, you can implement Salesforce for financial companies because you understand the processes, the lingo, the KPIs, what's important. You can hit the ground running. People people won't necessarily, they'll want you to have the tech skills, but they're buying you for the industry knowledge because you've had 12 years in industry knowledge. So some of our mums, that have gone through our program have years in utilities, they have years in non-profit, they have years in finance, they have years in marketing. That's why people hire them because of all of that industry background. They've learned Salesforce, but now they can go and implement Salesforce or work in an end customer where Salesforce is used in the industry where they worked. That's a great, it doesn't mean you have to stay in that industry, but it's a great platform to kind of take a leap into.
Yes, definitely. And I love the fact that you touched upon the type of training and how you learn and how to choose how you learn as well, because it is one thing trying to narrow down what you want to do, and like you said, being very niche and finding your focus, but also how you're going to take in that information to actually learn and to move on and to be able to do that as a job. We in our community, we get asked a lot about where do I start and what do I do. The default seems to be very expensive on-site boot camp, and people think that that's where you're going to get started, and we always get asked about which boot camps, where do I start. And then I think people look into the price of some of those and they think, I can't commit to that. And it's not just the price as well, it's the amount of time. So if you are a mum or if you've still got another job and you're training on the side, you can't commit to coming off site for, several months and traveling into London, for instance, and spending hours upon hours in a classroom.
Mhm.
And that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
You might take it in, but also you've taken a chance on thousands of pounds that you might not even go on and use in your next role anyway. So finding what works for you, absolutely, and what works for you in that moment in your life as well. And that, if you are someone that has perhaps just left university and you think, I can go on and do a boot camp at this point, it's absolutely fine, then fair enough. But if you're also somebody that can't commit to that, then yeah, online resources,
Yeah.
and just finding what works for you. And it is different for
Yeah.
everybody. I think that's what people don't understand. You don't have to be present in the classroom, but you said you like a live event at least because you're engaged in that and it's happening live, instead of thinking when it's on demand, you're like, I can see it on my desktop, but I still haven't clicked on it.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then I don't even open the email. So, yeah, so it's a great point, and that's why I launched Supermums. So, originally, Salesforce only offer live, we're an authorized Salesforce training provider. So, if you want to do their course, originally it was 5 days in Staines. And so I'd have to pay for a hotel to be up in Staines for a week. And
Gosh.
one of the courses, I had morning sickness on my, I was like, I made it. And I
Oh,
sat in the whole blooming course feeling very off,
wish
I
this
have to
was
say.
online.
Fond memories, but it's like 3.5 grand a pop, right? So with Supermums, we went to Salesforce and said we want to break this course, like completely, right, rewrite it. We're the only ones that deliver it in the way that we deliver it. But we broke it down to the course was 5 days, but we broke down that into segments, and actually we broke it down into 2.5 blocks. So every week we cover a 2.5 hour, 3 hour live session, is recorded so people watch it on demand if they can't make it live. And that covers one of the core competencies. And then we give people homework up to, I think it's 14 hours of homework. It's 16 hours a week, basically, so it's probably slightly less, 13 hours of homework, where they're practicing that competency and doing exercises and actually building out a system. And also they do some trailhead activities, but they also meet with a mentor, and the mentor gives them one-to-one support. They check it, they help them get it right. Somebody's holding them hand every single week. So the whole course that was originally 5 days is stretched over 3 months. And it's that muscle memory as well, which is really important, because the thing is, when you go on a 5 day course or a boot camp, you're learning so much in a squashed amount of time, you don't actually sort of really get it. So when we do like a 3 hour learning exercise, and then you're for another 13 hours practicing it and making sure you've got it right, we then the mentor will submit a homework record to say it's been completed. So again, it creates that accountability, that structure. So after 3 months, you do all that study, you practice, practice, build that muscle memory, and then you do your certification exam in month 4. So you kind of a bit like going to university or college, you know when your exams are coming up and you're like, right, I'm going to focus for that. So you've got your deadline and that focus. If you don't have that, you'll just end up never taking the cert. I mean, off the back of that course I did with morning sickness, it took me 3 years to get that cert. I never got round to it. Obviously, I had a baby and everything else, but in month 4 we do the cert, and then we put people on work experience once they've done all of that and they've completed their homework records. They've done their cert. We put them on work experience with non-profits, and they get real life work experience. And over that time, they get 3 references. So it's like they can get reference from the work experience, a reference from the trainer, reference from their mentor. And these are all people patting them on the back saying, well done, you've done a brilliant job. So as you can imagine, that is a completely different learning environment to being on a boot camp for 5 days where, all this knowledge is chucked at you and then you walk out going, what was I doing again? It's like,
Yes. You know what, I had something similar with driving lessons. I never got my driving license because I never needed one when I was younger. And
no.
when you look into driving lessons and it says crash course and you can do it in like a few days, if you, because I know I'm going to be, when I eventually do it, a nervous driver. If I were to do a crash course, I haven't done that kind of memory of I done something and then you go away and you learn and you do and you build
Mm.
up your confidence as you go. I'll know I'll do it in a crash course and then go away. I might pass everything, but I'll get on the road on my own and I'll
Confidence, yeah,
totally, yeah.
you
So
don't
you
have the
need
confidence
that.
level. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. It needs to be spread out over those like 3 months, like you said, that
Yeah.
instead of just a 5 day course and you kind of went through it, didn't take
Mm.
it in, you have no confidence in what you learn and you can't actually apply it anywhere.
And nobody's checking it either. I think the importance of references and people checking the work you've done and you completing assignments is really key. I think
Mm.
what a boot camp and equally what our course offers to something online is, the sense of community and people around you. One of the things that I know that you want to chat about was, how do you get the confidence? And obviously we talked about superpowers, we talked about industry experience, but actually having other people around you on that same journey is one of the biggest feedbacks we get at Supermums. They love the mentors, but they love the other Supermums that they're meeting, that are on this journey, that they have that peer support with, that motivates them when they're having that learning dip, because we all go on that learning dip. I was talking it to people yesterday because we had all our Supermums together at a big event. You're always going to have those bits where you think, oh my God, I can't do this. And that's when you need everybody else to be lifting you up. And that's made an incredible difference for people on our journey, because some of them tried to learn Salesforce by themselves through free training and they just have never made it. Hence why they then signed up for Supermums, because one, they got lost, they didn't have the confidence, they didn't have the network. And one of the best ways of getting a job is the network. Like over the last 8 years, we've obviously built an incredible network and reputation. So people headhunt them, they get jobs through each other, all of those different things. So I think that, they're all the things you want to think about when you look for the right training, all those components.
Yeah, definitely. It is something that I think people don't realize other people are feeling that way. That sometimes you think I'm the only one that's having that dip in enthusiasm or learning or whatever
Yeah,
it is, and you think other people are feeling that way, and you kind of
yeah,
just we're very hard on ourselves as well, and we're like, I'm the only one, so I'm going to drop out of this or not continue. But you're right, if you've got other people saying it and kind of all helping each other through,
yeah.
you'll definitely get to the end. And that kind of leads into the challenges I wanted to ask you about, because that is something as well. If we don't have a network that's around us that is helping us through the learning, can be a challenge. But what are some of the biggest challenges that mums face when entering or returning to the tech industry, and how can they overcome them?
Mm. So I think there's two sides to look at this. One is how to learn, which we've talked a lot about. I think one is, just to summarize, I suppose, what we've just talked about in that space is that make sure you've got the right training that lends to your learning style, that you've got the support around you, that you're doing something that's going to get you the work experience and the references, that, gives you the career support as well. So at Supermums, we do career advisory, recruitment support. You kind of, I sort of talk about 9 ingredients really to set you up for success, to transform. Because if you don't have those things, they're the challenges, right? Being isolated, not having the motivation, not having the right work experience, all these are blockages to you going from A to Z and actually making it successful. So at Supermums, we kind of put together that whole mix of, the network, the mentoring, the career coaching, the technical training that is virtual, the work experience, all of those things. I think the other challenges, and I think it ties in with the success stories here really, is that there's a reason why we need to change career. So a lot of the mums, obviously I can't name names, we've got amazing case studies on our website, and some of the personal stuff isn't shared in those case studies. But we've got people that want to get divorced, right? We've got people with health issues. We've got people with kids who've got disabilities. We've got, people who travel, their partners travel a lot and they need a job that's going to be remote. We've got single parents, you name it. There's a reason why for this stuff going on, and they've got all that personal stuff going on. So we launched our Mums on Cloud 9 podcast to bring on experts to talk about all this other stuff going on, like the health, working with our, getting good relationships with our kids, helping them juggle responsibilities, helping them think about divorce and financial planning and all these different things. Because I was like, how do I help them with all that stuff? And that was the best way for us to do it through our podcast. But you're going to have all those other challenges, right? Which will stop you potentially, will help, that's the motivation for doing this potentially, is launching your career, but you've got all this other stuff going on. What's really important is you get support for all those other things. So with Mums on Cloud 9, we've got, experts that we recommend around health, around financial planning, around menopause, around, relationships with your kids, because if you don't get support for those other things that will potentially, stop you, or you might be feeling quite, depressed. Say, for example, you're in an unhappy relationship and you're wanting to get your career back on track because you're going through a divorce. There's a lot of negative stuff you're having to deal with and hold on to. So it's really important. When I went through divorce, and all this stuff, my dad passed away and everything else. I had endometriosis, so I had everything all going on at once, but I had a counsellor all the way through that. And I'd never had a counsellor before, but I was like, I need somebody to hold my hand every week. I think it's really important that you tap into the right support in to do with your personal circumstances, to also support your career progression, because you won't be able to focus on the career stuff if the other things aren't being dealt with. So I think it's, there's two sort of sets of things here, the push and the pull.
Yes, and it's such a good point. You're so right, because if you're going through certain things, you're not thinking, I feel like I've really got the confidence to go on and learn something new and try something new and really embrace that. You're
Yeah.
not going to be feeling that
No.
anyway, let alone feeling like you have a network around you that can help with all of that as well. So it's such a good point, because it takes a lot anyway to start thinking about things like a career transition at any point in your life. But as life goes on and you have all of those other challenges that start to come up, thinking about a career transition and retraining and things like that, it's just going to be so much
Yeah.
harder, because you've got all of those challenges in your life. So
Yeah, but
yeah.
you want to find the light at the end of your tunnel. So that's why I encourage people to lean into case studies. If case studies on the Supermums website, on the SheCanCode website, because the case studies show you, that's the vision, that's the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So, we've had brilliant feedback around, I've managed to secure my first house, after being a thing, I've got a flexible job now, which I can use and travel around the world with. I've got, where partners, work abroad a lot of the time, they've got that flexible job that they can still look after the kids whilst also having something meaningful. Because some of these women, many of the women, they've all had careers and backgrounds in many cases. Some haven't even had that, to be fair. They've been at work, stay-at-home parents for most of their life. We've had people from every type of background, and the success stories are what obviously make us tick at Supermums. Like, we love helping them achieve the results and solving the problems that perhaps brought them here in the first place. So I think, depending on your background and your circumstances, lean into the case studies, and you've got to imagine, like, I want to be them. That's the vision I want for myself. And you're only ever going to take this leap if you do the research. So going back to how I transitioned, I met people and I spoke to people to be able to make an informed decision about whether I invest money in training to upskill. It's an investment, right? They do cost money, but and our course costs about 2.5. But what we say to people is, look, you could pay that back in 10 days. You can pay it back in less than a month with a job. So Claudia's case study on our website, she said exactly that, and it's the case for many others, right? They've literally paid it off with 1 month's earning. So, and then you can get a 20k pay increase within 2 to 4 years, depending on how quick you want to progress. So you have to kind of think about it as a long-term plan, but also look for options. Like with Supermums, we have a 12-month payment plan, subject to eligibility with one of our partners. So you think, well, that's £297 a month, towards it. So you kind of look, there's options there. You can ask friends and family to invest in you as well. It's like starting a business. You've got to kind of look at it as like, well, if I was starting a business, people would lend me money and I'd invest that in a business because that's going to help in my career. You've got to think about your career in the same way.
Yeah.
You're going to have to invest money to gain, because it's just the same as being an entrepreneur. There's no different. We're all trying to make a living.
Yeah,
So I think it's important about how you think about it.
definitely. And the more case studies that you read as well, the more that can help you find that person that you can connect with. Because I've found community members seem to be like, that's not me. I read that story and that's not me, and I can't really align with that, and I can't see myself doing that. But the more that you read where people are coming from and what they've done to get there,
Yeah,
suddenly you connect with someone and you're like,
yeah,
actually, I could maybe do that because that lady's story really aligns with me. I
yeah.
wanted to ask you about some of those stories on flexible tech roles and how that's transformed lives. Are there some case studies that kind of stand out, or is there like somebody in your mind where you like that was a really good success story about?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I say, there's a lot of personal stories which sometimes aren't shared on those case studies, but we've got some amazing ones. And there's some beautiful ones, to say, where they've landed a great career, they've got that flexibility, but it's helped them make that difficult decision about divorce, for example, and sort of
Yeah,
moving on. We've had quite a few of those. And similar ones around, I never thought I was a techie person, to Voki did this one. It's on our LinkedIn actually feed from last week. She never thought she was a techie person, been in recruitment for years, working for the DWP, and then she got into it and absolutely loves it, and now works as a freelance Salesforce consultant, has never looked back. So she has teenage kids. She's kind of that, not an empty nester yet, but we've had people who are empty nesters that are like, what do I do now? Like, I'm completely lost in my life. Shanita was a vet's spouse, and so she's obviously constantly going around the world, and so this has given her that opportunity to have a job and not feel like she's given up everything alongside it, and being that stay-at-home mum. There's so many, rewarding stories that's what we really thrive on at Supermums. So I think it's, you can look and find people that resonate with you. We've got people from all sorts of backgrounds. People have been made redundant, people have lost their jobs during COVID. You name it, we've got it.
yes, exactly. I remember I spoke to a lot of ladies after COVID who said, being in lockdown with my husband, I noticed that my husband, who was a software developer or a software engineer, what they did for a living.
Mm,
And there were lots of
amazing.
ladies who
Yeah.
retrained and
Yeah,
said, I could do
we've
this.
got husbands and wives that do it together. And I was like, do you help
Really?
each other? I was like, do you talk about it over the kitchen table? So yeah, we have a lot of husbands and wives in the Supermums community now as well. It's lovely. They can't all
Amazing.
make events together though, because one of them has to look after the kids.
Oh, I see. Different set of challenges.
Yeah.
Um, we've spoken a little bit about the obviously the changes in the job market, and what is happening at the moment. But what about the skills or roles that are currently in high demand in tech, and how can people future-proof their careers, especially those coming from non-traditional backgrounds?
Mm.
What is in high demand?
I think we might have covered a lot of that in what we've talked about already, like all the different job roles that I talked about, like a business analyst, project manager, the technical roles themselves, and particularly with AI component to it, that's where, the opportunities are. You've got them across all of the things, including the sales. None of that is going to go away. I think your background is relevant. So think about your industry experience, or, I was working, I do the career advice sessions every week, and a lady has not worked for quite a while. She used to work in consumer goods and Unilever, so like a massive brand, but then took years off looking after her son who had I think ADHD or one of the neurodiverse things. And I said, well, that's where she's worked for a charity supporting that cause voluntarily, but obviously, I think he's autistic actually, sorry. And so I said, why don't you work for charities that are, that focus on autism? And we've had that before. We've had a lady whose daughter was Down syndrome, and now she's working for the Down Syndrome Association. So, the fact that you've had a child or whatever in a sort of disability, or, again, one lady's working for a cancer charity because her family was affected by cancer, now doing their database management and
Oh,
fundraising,
wow.
is, you can think about how do you translate that? Like, about autism, you're passionate about it. So I'm like, go and
Mm.
work for charities. I had another lady, actually a lady from Ukraine that studied with us because she was moved over here, obviously, with the war. But she's got a complete passion about visual impairment. So I said, well, the Salesforce is very big in visual impairment charities. And actually, we worked with an organization that is like a membership body, and they were helping put Salesforce in lots of the different visual impairment charities. So like, that's probably where to focus. So I think, think about what you're passionate about, think about what you might have knowledge and skills in based on your life circumstances or based on your industry background. And then that's where to focus yourself. We've all got these superpowers in interests and capacities. And so
Mm.
we don't normally qualify people out to kind of transfer, because I think anybody can do it, but it's just thinking about where you have your strengths to sell yourself
Yes.
in.
Yeah, and somebody helping you to sit down and identify those as well, like in your quiz, because otherwise you don't realize. You just kind of go about your career and you think you've been doing the same things throughout, and people worry about things like squiggly careers and changing direction and trying new things because they think it can look bad on your CV, that
Mm,
you've moved around a lot, and actually it just looks like you've tried lots of new things and the stars align
yeah,
suddenly, and you take all those skills that you learned from everywhere and they come together
yeah,
in
yeah.
in a role that suits you, and tech is really good for that, to bring them all together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you quickly about employers and companies. So we get asked about a lot. What practical steps can they take, do you think, to create more inclusive and supportive environments for working parents in tech?
Mm. Well, it's a big question, but I think I'll focus in on a couple of things. I think one is a company needs to think about what flexible policies they can put into place, what works for their type of business, what's possible, and obviously to work with having those conversations with our employees. So for example, at Supermums, we have core hours. So we say, well, everybody needs to work these core hours, but you can have flexibility around the rest of the time. We have things like where you can buy holiday schemes, for example, buy more holiday. And I think, working out what flexibility means for you and your company and what's viable versus not is really important, and to have those conversations and to advertise that, right? Because you want to attract a diverse client base, put that. And equally, a lot of on job specs, you might put full time, but it's kind of like, well, are you open to 4 days? You might have an amazing candidate that wants a 4 day week as opposed to 5 day week. So I think about how you advertise things, think about flexibility. I think having a parental group or even a social group where parents or people can come together and discuss personal circumstances, when you have business meetings, it's always about business, right? And you don't really want to take up the time. Yes, you might have a quick social chat, but you're not getting deep. Whereas we have a social lunch every week. And
Mm,
actually, that's where things come up. Where if our kids, our kids all have various neurodiversity kind of things going on, that's when that's when that comes up, and we talk about different strategies we're doing and things like that. So having that social group, having those peer support groups of parents and employees where they can talk more personally about stuff going on actually builds relationships and builds bonds between employees. So I think that's really important. And I think also a lot of companies are introducing paternal leave. Like, why the reality of why women are challenged in the workplace or with gender equality and pay gaps, etc., is because the onus obviously has always been on the women to have maternity leave.
mhm.
And actually, a lot of companies are offering paternity leave. So actually, it could be the man or woman taking the time off. Like, why is it not always the woman? Actually, and there's a really interesting statistic, and it was about 40% of households where the woman is the main breadwinner. So actually, if the
Right.
woman's earning more and the man's not, the man needs to be the one taking like the paternity leave.
Yeah.
So I think times are shifting quite a lot, and that's significantly shifted. So, and I was quite surprised by that. I obviously had like that autistic view, but actually the men is the one earning the more. Like, why do we think like that? Like, that has evolved quite a lot. So I think more companies need to make sure that they are accommodating for whether it's the man or the wife that take the maternity leave and not make it so biased all the time.
Yes, and putting those things in job descriptions as
Yeah.
well, because a lot of companies, we find that they do a lot internally, but they forget to put those things in their job descriptions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you
True.
are reading them, it's just
Mm,
the bog standard, somebody from HR wrote this, and they might put a little bit about diversity and inclusion at the bottom, but they won't actually list the things off. When we talk to companies and they do like a company profile and they'll put the benefits and you think all of this should be in your job description so
yeah,
everybody sees it
true.
all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
flexibility for
Absolutely.
parents. And some people have said to me, it's a lot more than a Slack channel. So it's actually a feeling of how you feel at work every day and how your company makes you feel when you come to work and you need things suddenly like
Mm,
flexibility, whether that's becoming a parent or caring for a family member or whatever it may be.
yeah,
But I think some companies think, oh, well, we've got a Slack channel for that. If you want to put things in there, discuss,
yeah,
we've got Slack channels. Like it's a bit more than that. And the things that
yeah.
you are
Exactly.
doing
It's
well.
finding that rounded support. And I think
Yeah.
also is I massively encourage women in our community to influence that. Because
Yes.
some companies don't know, they might be a small business, they might not even thought about it or have nobody to really take the lead on it. So
Mm.
I think don't sit there and moan like necessarily, like,
Yeah.
take action and say, look, could I set up a peer support group for this and do things? And one of our super mums, she got a job at this company, and previously I'd spoken to this company and they just didn't seem supportive of women. Um, and I said to him, like, did it feel aligned with you? And she said, well, I've got them to change their policies. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
hats off.
wow.
From the interview. And then, she's a good South African bold, and that's it. We need
Yeah.
we need to learn from the South Africans. I do love them. They're very bold. And I think, stand up and encourage and ask. Don't sit there and sort of, accommodate a lot of,
Mm.
a lot of us can be, don't want to necessarily sort of be putting ourselves out there, feeling like we're, inconveniencing them. They might not have thought about it. If they love you and they want you, and they, are seriously like going, well, actually, yeah, you're right. We need to do something about that. Encourage them to be family friendly. Encourage them to think about how they can support people. If they don't listen to you or they're not interested, it's not the company that's right for you. So I
Yes.
think then you just need to walk away and find the one that is.
Yeah, because if you've been for a company before where you've experienced something that was very supportive and you've gone into another one and you point that out and you're like, hey, where I used to work, they did this,
Mm,
then yes, if they're very open and they're like, you know what, we hadn't even thought about it, then they
yeah,
implement it. Great. If they don't, you kind of, that's a red flag and you start thinking, yeah, maybe this,
yeah,
I won't be here for the long term.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Heather, we are already out of time. I could keep chatting with you on this topic all afternoon, but we are already at the end of our episode. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with Spilling the Tea today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, no, you're welcome. And it's lovely to be with such an ally. This is what we do every day. We want to support women in tech. And if we can help anybody, please do visit our website at supermums.org. We offer free career consultations as well to women considering careers. So we encourage you to book in, find out more. But I wish you every success in your career journey. Thank you for having me on the show.
No, right. And yes, our community members, you can find Supermums inside our community as well. And we're going to include all of their contact details along with this episode as well. So please check them out. We absolutely love Supermums work. So for everybody listening, as always, thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you again next time.